A very good morning to one and all present in this session. We are here gathered in the special lecture series organized by KIIT School of Languages. This lecture series is divided into two sessions. The pre-lunch session, that's the session one, is titled Cultivating Critical Thinking, and it will be delivered by our very own Professor Beerendra Pandey, Fulbright MA and PhD from State University of New York, Stony Brook. He is a professor and dean of KIIT School of Language. It gives me immense pleasure to read out a few things, a few notable works of Dr. Pandey. Dr. Beerendra Pandey works as a professor and dean in the School of Languages, KIIT Deemed to be University, Bhubaneswar, India. He is a Fulbright scholar from the State University of New York at Stony Brook, USA, from where he received an MA and PhD in English literature. He also completed graduate certificate in cultural studies from the same university. Before visiting the USA as a Fulbright scholar, he had completed his undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in English from Tribhuvan University, Kathmandu, and Bihar University, Muzaffarpur, respectively. Dr. Pandey has over 34 years of teaching experience from the UG to the PhD levels at the Tribhuvan University, Kathmandu, Nepal. He has taught self-designed courses in writing and rhetoric, trauma theory, affect theory, human rights literature, and animal studies. He has supervised more than 50 MPhil theses and a dozen PhD dissertations. Dr. Pandey also has the experience of teaching managerial communication at the MBA level and is currently co-supervising a PhD level work in the area of emotional intelligence and distributed leadership. Dr. Pandey is a well-known writer in the area of literary and cultural studies. He has about half a dozen books to his credit, including Intellectual History Reader, 2005, and Movements in Cognitive Methodologies, New Boundary of English Studies, 2007. He has authored 11 book chapters, and the most frequently cited of these, The Pedagogy of Partition Literature in the Light of Trauma Theory in Southern Postcolonialisms, edited by Sumanyu Satpathy, was published by Routledge in 2008. His next book article, titled The Barking Dog and the Crying Bird in Partition Stories, Beastly Modernism and Subaltern Animism of Manto, Rakesh, and Anand, is forthcoming in Beastly Modernisms, Animal Figurations in Modernist Literature and Culture, edited by Alex Goody and Saskia McCracken, to be published by Edinburgh University Press in 2022. Besides the above book articles, Dr. Pandey has written about 24 articles in both national and international journals. His most recent paper, entitled Nailing Gandhi for Cracking India in Manohar Malgonkar's A Bend in the Ganges and Raj Gill's The Rape, featured as the lead article in the Journal of Comparative Literature and Aesthetics. In recent years, Dr. Pandey has devoted his critical attention to the development of his own Maithili literature and culture. He has contributed enormously with his critical writings on Nepali Maithili literature and Mithila painting, for which the President of Nepal conferred on him the prestigious Vidyapati Puraskar in 2017. On the leadership role, he worked as the Secretary of Culture Committee, UNESCO Project, Ministry of Education, Government of Nepal in Kathmandu, from a period of 2015 to 2019. We are really honored to have you, sir, and I welcome you to the first session of the special lecture series. Over to you, sir.
Sir, you are not audible.
Sir, your voice is not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hold on. Let me go back. Yeah. So, title of my presentation is Cultivating Critical Thinking. Uh, Basically, what I'm trying to present to you, uh, how can you understand the tools of critical thinking, and how can you master, how can you understand and master those tools for critical understanding and critical analysis. And I'm trying to cater to different levels of audience. My primary audience is my students of our school, the bachelor and the master's level students. Also my faculty members, also researchers doing PhD work, and anybody and everybody in the academia. I think academia, this critical thinking is a buzzword in the academia. So also trying to appeal to or cater to or minister to the needs of the academia across KIIT University. Okay, so I go to my first slide. What is critical thinking? Bullet point gives you the definition of critical thinking. Critical thinking is the art of analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluating thinking with a view to improving it. I'll come to the example a little bit later. First of all, let me tell you that there are three key terms in this definition. One is analysis, analyzing. Another is synthesis, synthesizing. And third one is evaluation. So say, for example, there is a student who comes to KIIT from Rasulgarh, for example. Okay. Every day the student has to come to KIIT from Rasulgarh, and it is much loss of a time for him or for her. uh, Commute. In commuting, a lot of time is being killed. So the concerned students wants to buy a two-wheeler. Okay. This is the problem before this student buying a two-wheeler. So this is a problem. This is an issue for the student. Why this is a problem? Why this is an issue for the student? This is because the student may not have the required money to purchase the vehicle. The parents may also not be willing to finance it. He or she doesn't have the required amount of money to buy the two-wheeler. So this is the problem. So in order to crack this problem, the student has to use his or her critical thinking, and the initiation of critical thinking starts with the analysis of the problem. Analysis of a solution to the problem. The student should think of certain solutions in mind. How can I have a two-wheeler? Should I steal somebody's money? Should I be a thief? Should I be a robber? Should I borrow from somebody? Should I take a loan from bank? Etc. 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 So from bad ones to good ones to better ones, of the alternatives. The student may have a lot of alternatives in his or her mind. And will finally zero in on one. Okay, I take a loan from a bank. I take a loan from a bank. Then the problem will be how will I pay it? We'll think about it and we'll say, okay, I will save a little bit of money from my daily expenses. I get quite a lot of money during festivals from my parents and from my relatives. I will save some from them and somehow will be able to pay it over a period of 3 years. I will be able to pay it. So this way, the student analyzes the problem, then puts together analytical strands into a whole, and then finally arrives at a conclusion, evaluates it, and goes for it. So this is putting critical thinking to practice. Okay, so this is a very practical example. I gave you a practical example for you to understand what critical thinking is. Three terminologies that have come definition: analysis, synthesis, and evaluation.
Sir? Sir, you are not audible, sir.
That's true. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. You are audible now.
Gaurav sir, am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you are. You are.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, I was trying to unpack the three key terminologies here: analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. What is analysis? Analysis is breaking down information into its parts and elements in order to grasp facts and concepts. Similarly, what is synthesis? Synthesis is putting together elements and parts to form new wholes so that implications can be examined, conclusions can be drawn, and this examination of implications and drawing of communications are supported by reliable evidence. What is evaluation? Evaluation is judging according to standards or criteria in order to arrive at a conclusion about significance of the conclusion, the value of the conclusion, and the credibility of the conclusion. Basically, in critical thinking, we mobilize our analytical skills, our skills of synthesis, synthesizing skill, and our skill of evaluation or evaluating skill. Uh, Putting critical thinking to practice also entails, in order of chronology, our commitment to overcome our prejudices, our biases, our subscriptions to our own cultural politics, because these things lead to egocentrism, sociocentrism, gender centricism, and until and unless we can overcome or minimize, if not completely overcome, minimize our subscriptions to these things, unless we control them, we will not be a critical thinker. We need to control these things. Only then we will be able to solve the problem in an objective way. And after we have solved the problem, we should also be able to communicate our analysis, synthesis, and solution in a very effective way to our readers. So critical thinking to practice involves all those things. Go to the next slide. What is the identity of a critical thinker? Who can be called a critical thinker? A critical thinker is a man, is a person who raises vital questions and problems, formulates questions or the problems very clearly and precisely. He or she gathers, interprets, assesses relevant information using abstract ideas, interpret in an effective way. Person also comes to well-reasoned conclusions and solutions, testing them against relevant criteria and standards. Thinks open-mindedly within alternative systems of thought, recognizing and assessing as need be their assumptions, implications, and practical consequences. It's very important that the conclusion to which the critical thinker comes. A critical thinker must juxtapose the conclusion with alternative systems of thought. And finally, the critical thinker communicates effectively in figuring out solutions to complex problems. So if a person has these qualities or these makings in him or her, person can be called critical. Now I want to talk about the structure of a critical thought, and through this diagram we see the entire structure of a critical thought. At the bottom towards the left you see purpose. So you go in order of chronology: purpose, problem, assumptions, perspective, data and evidence, concepts and theories, interpretation or and inference, and finally implications. So see, a thought is a reasoning, and all reasoning has a purpose. Whenever a good writer writes, the writer states the purpose clearly, distinguishes the purpose from related purposes, and also ensures, keeps checking and ensures that the writer is on target all through the text, and chooses significant and realistic purposes. So as a reader, when we are reading a literary text, we should be tracking the purposes of the writer at several places in the text. They will be scattered at several places in the text. As a writer, when we write, we should be very mindful of the fact that we have to state our purpose clearly. We have also give related purposes, and we should periodically check that we
Sir, you're not audible, sir.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Well, this is giving me a lot of trouble. I don't know where you lost me. Can you tell me where you lost me?
So you were talking about the purposes, sir. While we read a text, we should know what the writer is tracking the purposes or not.
Yes. So we should be tracking as a reader. We should be tracking a writer's purposes all through the text. And as a writer, when we are writing, we should ensure that we have stated our purpose very clearly, and we should also put the related purposes in our writing here and there, and continuously we should be on the lookout for keeping to the target, not veer away. Like when I gave bachelor level first year assignment, main problem with their writing was that they had veered away from their main purpose, okay, and had brought in a lot of unnecessary things. If that happens, then that means that your writing lacks critical thinking. Okay. Then we move to problem. All reasoning is an attempt to figure out something, to solve the question and to solve some problem. Therefore, a good writer states the question at issue very clearly and precisely, expresses the question in several ways to clarify its meaning and scope, breaks the question into sub-questions, distinguishes questions that have definitive answers from those that are a matter of opinion, and from those that require consideration of multiple viewpoints. So if you are aware of these things and ensure that your problematization comes in this manner in your writing, that means that you are a writer with critical thinking. Same way, when you read, you should track the places of problematizations that the writer does in his or her write-up or article or a text. Third point is that all reasoning is based on certain presumptions, certain assumptions, certain hypotheses. And a good writer clearly identifies his or her assumption and determines whether those assumptions are justifiable. A good writer also considers how the assumptions are shaping the writer's point. So, as a writer, this is what you should do. As a reader, this is what you should be tracking when you read a text. Then we move to perspective. All the reasoning is done from point of view. All the reasoning is from a particular perspective. So both as a writer and as a reader, you should identify the point of view. And you should also be mindful, or you should also be open to or responsive to other points of view, and identify strength as well as weakness of a particular point of view. And you should be fair-minded in evaluating all those points of view. Then we move to data and evidence. Now, this data and evidence means that all the reasoning is based on some information. That information on which it is based is called data. And this information actually acts as evidence to what the writer, to the point that the writer is trying to make. Therefore, as a reader, try to track these things, and as a writer, try to restrict your claim to those supported by the information that you have or the data that you provide. Search for information that opposes your position as well as information that supports it. Now, not a good critical thinker will have only such data that support the opinion, but sometimes a good critical thinker would also bring in data that contradict the position, and this is what happens most of the time when you are writing argumentative essay. When you write argumentative essay, you will see that you have to bring in such data that will contradict your position, and then you have to counter argue against that. Okay, so in argumentative writing, your critical thinking is really tested in a big way. Then we come to these concepts and theories. What this means is that all the reasoning is expressed through and shaped by concepts and ideas. Therefore, as a reader, when you are reading, identify key concepts and explain them clearly. And as a writer, be sure to put in your key concepts and also explain your key concepts very clearly. Consider alternative concepts and alternative definitions of concepts also, because a good critical thinker does these kind of things. Also ensure that you are using concepts with care and precision. You should be very precise whenever you are making an assertion. And then number 7 is interpretation and inference. Interpretation and inference. What this means is that all reasoning contains inferences or interpretations by which we draw conclusions and give meaning to data or the information. So we should only be inferring what the evidence implies. If we do not do that, then extraneous inferences will come, and that will be a flaw. We should also be checking our inferences for their consistency, and we should also identify our assumptions that lead to inferences. Finally, we come to implications. What does this mean? What this means is that all the reasoning leads somewhere. It leads us to somewhere. This means it has some implications, it has some consequences, and we should trace the implications and consequences that follow from our logic, from our reasoning, from our line of reasoning. This is what a good writer should do, particularly in the concluding part of the writing. A researcher should do, this is what a researcher should do in the concluding chapter of the thesis or the dissertation. And search for negative as well as positive implications. Again, should be very open-minded here, looking not just for positive implications but also negative ones. And consider all possible consequences, and this way our reading, both our reading and our writing, becomes suffused with critical thinking. So now we move to the next slide. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Nobody has spoke, so I thought. Now, if we use this structure of thought if we give importance to this structure of thought, our questions should follow from this. So through this slide, I am trying to show you the right questions that we should be using both as a reader and as a writer based on this structure of thought, which we just talked about. So the first question relates to clarity. The first question relates to clarity. What I am trying to accomplish. What I am trying to accomplish. What question I am addressing. And what assumption has led me to conclusion. What point of view I am looking at this issue. What supporting information do I need to settle the issue? What is the main idea here? And can I elaborate the main idea with the help of a theory? For researchers in our discipline, this is where theory comes into play. But unfortunately, many people make theory the elephant and the idea the tail. And this is very wrong, because it is not the tail that moves the elephant. It is the elephant that moves the tail. Okay, so the idea is always the elephant, and theory is the tail. How did I arrive at the conclusion? And should also test the conclusion by employing alternative methodology, and should also be putting question to oneself: what am I implying? And testing the implications. These are the questions that we should keep in mind, and find an answer to these questions will lead us, will make our writing or our reading, be suffused with critical thinking. Now, there are three levels of thought. Look at the thought, this level of thought from the bottom. Lower order thinking. Lower order thinking. Then we move to higher order thinking. Then we move to highest order thinking. So a lower order thinking is not a mark of critical thinking at all. It is not a mark of critical thinking at all. Higher order thinking has some characteristics of critical thinking. It is actually highest order of thinking. That is the real mark of critical thinking. So let us know all these levels. Lower order thinking is unreflective, dependent on our gut feeling, and it is self-serving. It is just related to what we believe, our biases, our prejudices. So if your thought flows from your biases, prejudices, and your gut feeling, and you are unreflective, this means this is not at all critical thinking. You have thinking of a very lower order. Okay. 2-3 notches better than this is higher order thinking. If you have thinking of a higher order, this means that you are selectively reflective. You are having critical thinking, but you lack proper vocabulary to express that critical thinking, and you are not consistently fair. Sometimes you are fair, but sometimes you are unfair. Sometimes you do not contradict yourself, but at one or two places you do contradict yourself. These types of problems will be there. So if your writing is like this, then this means that you have some levels of critical thinking, but your critical thinking is not up to the mark. Then we come to the highest order thinking. This is thinking of the highest order. If you have this means that you are explicitly reflective. Your writing is full of all critical thinking tools that we talked about. Your writing has that you talked about in the previous slide. Your writing has all those things, and you are consistently fair. Okay, so we now move to the next slide. Now we come to universal critical thinking standards. There are certain critical thinking standards which are accepted worldwide, and these are 8. The first one is clarity. The second one is accuracy. The third one is precision. The fourth one is relevance. Fifth one is depth. Sixth one is breadth. Seventh one is logic. And the 8th and the last one is fairness. What does clarity mean? Now, when you say something, when you students make a point in the class, sometimes when you are trying to make a point in the class, you do not have clarity. So the follow-up question from the teacher would be, could you elaborate further? Could you give an example? What do you mean? Kind of thing. Could you illustrate what you mean? Because if you do that, then what you say becomes clear. So if a writer has that clarity of expression, then that is the hallmark. That is one of the hallmarks of critical thinking. In the same way, accuracy. If you said something, and if that something is accurate, then that is an example of critical thinking. Like, for example, you can say a chicken of 20 kg knocked down a duck. Do you think this statement is accurate? This is not accurate. Because it is not of
Sir, you are not audible.
Am I now?
Yes, sir, you are.
So where did you lose me? Where did you lose me? There is
microphone, I believe.
You were talking about accuracy.
Where did you lose me?
Sir, you were talking about accuracy. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
yeah. Okay. Yeah, yes. So I was telling that clarity is not just enough. We also need to be accurate. Accurate means like giving accurate information. For example, when you say a 50 kg hen or cock knocked down a duck, this is not accurate, because normally a cock or a hen would not be of 50 kg. Precision. Be very precise. Give details, but details should be specific to the point. There should be nothing unnecessary. If you give details specific to the point, that means that you have precision. Relevance. Everything should be connected to the question. Everything should be connected to the main issue. Everything should be connected to the main purpose. So if that is there, then your writing has relevance. Again, depth. Depth is another factor. Depth means what factors make a problem a really difficult problem. What are some of the complexities of this problem? Kind of things. How the problems can be dealt with. If you focus on these things, that means that you have depth. breadth. That means just don't look at a thing from just one perspective. Also try to look at it from another perspective, most often a contrary perspective, and always juxtaposing one with another perspective. So that gives helps you achieve breadth and logic. Is there a logical cohesion of ideas in your writing? You may be a very good analyst, but when it comes to putting your analysis into words, into writing, your writing may be disorganized. You may not have organization of idea, and if that is so, that means that there is some kind of a problem with your logic. So always look for a logical cohesion of ideas, and last of all, be very fair. This point number 6 and 8 are in a way like related. If you give deference to the opposite position, that means that you are becoming fair and you are not being just subjective and just one-sided. Don't try to be just one-sided kind of thing. Okay. I give you here practical tools to analyze a literary passage. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So, giving you some tools to analyze a passage. 8 questions. Whenever you read anything, always have this in mind. These should be like your mantras. And first of all, the first question that you should be asking yourself is, what is the main purpose of the passage? The main purpose of the passage is dot 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 dot. Remember, if there are last year, 4th year MA students, second year, 4th semester MA students in the class, when you gave Viva, and when I found problems with your presentation, with your write-up, sometimes I asked you this kind of questions, you see. The main purpose of this passage is dot dot dot. So this means, what is the main purpose of this passage? Key question addressed here is, what is the key question addressed here? What is the most important information here? What are the inferences and the conclusions here? What are the key concepts that need to be understood? What are the main assumptions lying the author's thinking? If the author's line of thinking is something to which I subscribe, what are the implications of the writer's line of reasoning? And what are the points of view presented in the passage? You just answer these 8 questions, and this means that you have critically understood a passage. You have understood a passage by exercising your critical thinking. That is your thought of the highest order. Okay. So let us see. You read a text called Kanthapura in Indian writing and English, and sorry, let me take you there. Let me take you there. Hold on. Just hold on a bit. Slide doesn't show something. Yes. So this is a normal reading view. It doesn't. Okay. So this is the passage.
Sir, it's not audible.
Sir, we are not able to hear you.
Sir, can you hear me?
What about now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, okay. So this is Raja Rao's forward to the novel Kanthapura, and just I'm reading out this from here, and we'll see how I have answered those questions. My publishers have asked me to say a word of explanation. That is the first paragraph. There is no village in India, however mean, that has not a rich Sthala Purana or legendary history of its own. Some god or godlike hero has passed away by the village. Rama might have rested under this peepal tree. Sita might have dried her clothes after her bath on this yellow stone, or the Mahatma himself on one of his many pilgrimages through the country might have slept in this hut, the low one by the village gate. In this way, the past mingle with the present, and the gods mingle with men to make the repertory of your grandmother always bright. One such a story from the contemporary annals of my village I have tried to tell. Then, telling has not been easy. Third paragraph. One has to convey in a language that is not one's own the spirit that is one's own. One has to convey the various sets and omissions of a certain thought movement that looks maltreated in an alien language. Maltreated in an alien language. I use the word alien. Yet English is not really an alien language to us. It is the language of our intellectual makeup, like Sanskrit or Persian was before, but not of our emotional makeup. We are all instinctively bilingual, many of us writing in our own language and in English. We cannot write like the English, we should not. We cannot write only as Indians. We have grown to look at the large world as part of us. Our method of expression, therefore, has to be a dialect which will someday prove to be as distinctive and colorful as the Irish or the American. Time alone will justify it. Uh, then the next paragraph, and this is I think the final two paragraphs. After language, the next problem is that of a style. Tempo of Indian life must be infused into our English expression, even as the tempo of American or Irish life has gone into the making of theirs. We in India think quickly, we talk quickly, and when we move quickly. There must be something in the son of India that make us rush and tumble and run on, and our paths are paths interminable. The Mahabharata has verses, and the Ramayana has verses. Purans there are endless and innumerable. We have neither punctuation nor the treacherous ats and ons to bother us. We tell one interminable tale. Episode follows episode, and when our thought stops, our breath stops, and we move on to another thought. This was and still is the ordinary style of our storytelling. I have tried to follow it myself in this story. They have been told of an evening when, as dusk falls, and through the sudden quiet, lights leap up in house after house, and stretching her bedding on the veranda, a grandmother might have told you, newcomer, the sad tale of her village. So this is the forward, and the previous 8 questions. See how I have tried to answer those 8 questions that helped me analyze the logic of this forward. The main purpose of this passage is to establish Indian English as a dialect, and I have quoted the author's own words. This is called trying to be in terms with the author. When you quote some words from the text itself, the main purpose of this passage is to establish Indian English as a dialect as distinctive and colorful as the Irish or the American. This is in the 3rd paragraph, towards the end of that paragraph. Key question addressed here is how to convey in a language, that is English, that is not one's own, the spirit that is one's own. short paragraph at the outset. The most important information here is the mention about the sacred geography of the Indian countryside. The whole of the second paragraph. That is the data. That is the information on which the assumptions have been made. The main inferences, conclusions here are: the past mingles with the present and the gods mingle with men in Indian narratives. Thirdly, the key concept needed to be understood are medium and text. Medium, any language is a medium. Text is the composition using that language. So text means style, narrative, texture, everything. The main assumption underlying the author's thinking is that his choice of English is a mere medium to convey his philosophical, cultural understanding of India. If the author's line of reasoning is taken seriously, the implication, not yes, is that Indian English writers should draw on Indian worldviews and not the alien ones. The main point of view presented in this passage is aptness of infusing what is a Western cultural baggage, Indians' intellectual makeup with the style of Indian storytelling, that is Indians emotional makeup. So see how I have tried, though I did it very quickly in the morning. I did it very quickly. I could have done it even in a better way, but even though I did it very quickly, I think I am quite on the money. The way I have analyzed this forward by using those 8 questions, okay, that helped me analyze the logic of this forward. That means that I have critically understood this forward, Rajara's forward, and my next challenge would be to write about it in a very cohesive manner. And if I do that, that means that I achieve critical thinking both as a reader and as a writer. So through this short presentation, I have tried to show you how you can cultivate critical thinking. That's all from my side. Thank you for being good listeners. But the floor is open. You can ask me any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, sir, for a brilliant presentation. I would now request the participants to direct your questions to sir. I would be requesting our students from the undergraduate and the postgraduate courses to start a discussion, please, if you have any questions, or maybe a comment.
Natia, you don't have a question. Nadia, did I make sense to you?
Nazia, can you hear us? You are not audible, actually. Nazia, you are not audible. If you wish, you may write your question or your comment in the chat box. I can read it from there. Sir has given you the example of Kanthapura. So the UG second year students, if you, okay. Sir.
Excuse me, ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, Nazia, you are.
Thank
you
you.
are.
Thank you. Sir, actually, I was taking notes while you were talking about the structure of critical thought, and then you actually made it more easier when you added the question using the structure of thoughts. So everything that you talked about, purpose, problem, assumption, data evidence, interpretation, implication. So it was quite well when you gave us, analyzing the logic of passage, where you gave us the main purpose and key and blanks, where we actually, while writing or thinking, focus on what we are actually implying, and everything goes on a right purpose. So thank you for that, sir. It was really helpful.
Sir, can't hear you, sir.
I could not catch what Najia said.
Nazia?
Yes, sir. Sir, am
Would
I audible to you? Hello?
would Debanjali ma'am, would you summarize what she said?
Sir, she said that things got a little more clearer. She got a better and a clearer picture when you, focused on how
Yeah.
to apply
Yeah.
the critical thinking. If
Yeah,
I
yeah,
understood correctly.
yeah. Because the earlier part was only, think about critical thinking in a theoretical way. The last part was actually demonstrating you how you can do it practically. So when you do something practically, your understanding becomes better, and this is why I had deliberately, intentionally done that, and also very intentionally chosen a passage from a text that you have read. So that was just to drive home the things in your mind. Just use,
Yes.
this is a very helpful tool that I have given you. If you use this tool, actually you will be able to analyze anything and everything. Whenever we teachers are faced, I mean, I in particular, when I am faced with a very challenging kind of a text, this is the tool I use. Takes me some time. Maybe I have to grapple with the text twice, thrice, but eventually, I come to understand it. And this is the habit that you should cultivate. That's what I wanted to demonstrate this, demonstrate to you. Okay.
Thank you, sir. We also have with us our postgraduate students. So if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to speak out, or maybe you can type it in the chat box as well if you are comfortable. Sir, since I don't think the MA or the yes, sir. Sir, Professor Pramod sir, so Pramod sir has got a question. Sir, how can parents encourage critical thinking at home and other places?
Parents always find it very difficult because children need that they will do most of the things quite critically. Well, I can. This is the habit that an individual needs to cultivate for one.
Your voice is breaking.
Critical thinking is a habit that one needs to cultivate oneself. Very difficult for a parent or a teacher, like myself and Sahil and all of our faculty members have been trying to instill sense and critical thinking into our bachelor level students. Most of them behave so uncritically. It is up to them. If they are not serious about cultivating it, nobody else can help them cultivate, not even parents.
Mhm. Yes, sir.
I killed two birds with one stone.
that was a really cool move, sir. So we have a question from Akanksha, our undergraduate student. When we are analyzing the text and we happen to have a different perspective than the narrator, how do we construct our answer?
Thing is that you should always thing is that you suppose your own perspective against perspective of the writer in a very objective way. See whether problems lie with perspective of the author. Also see whether there are problems with your own. If you are alive to these things and you think that your perspective is good one, it's objective, and there are really problems with the author perspective, always like it's not necessary that you have to go by the author. You can very much criticize the author.
Thank you, sir. Akanksha, I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So the next question we have is from our postgraduate student, Ranjita. So she has asked, thank you so much, sir, for this informative session. Now I will be oh, that's not a question, sir. Now I will be confident to frame quality answers or writings by applying critical thinking.
Okay, that will make me very happy because this is what I wanted you to learn, and if you learn that, this will give me extreme happiness.
True, sir. Mm.
Am I audible, sir?
Very much, sir, very much.
Sir, in continuation with Akanksha's question, I just want to ask, you talked about two things. One is perspective and the other one is fairness. Do you think these two things are contradictory in nature?
Sir, your voice broke towards the end. So say again.
Yeah, I asked that you talked about two things. You talked about perspective as well as fairness. Do you
Yes.
think these two things are contradictory in nature?
How perspective and fairness deal together? This is your question, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Everyone, prima facie, our perspective comes from, the culture to which we belong, our overall, what do you say, our overall emotional makeup as well as our intellectual makeup. It comes from there. And they always say that so there is an expression called as others see us. As others see us. Most of the time we become blind about our own, about ourselves, our own perspective. We think that, we are right, and they are wrong. But the other's perspective really allows us, if we remain responsive to open to the other's perspective, that always allows us to know the limitations of our own perspective. And this is why I use the word juxtaposition. And if that juxtaposition is there, then we become fair, very fair. So this is how this being fair and being perspectival go together.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Sir, we have got, okay, there is a question from Nazia, sir. Sir, how wise it will be to use, I think it will be, how wise it will be to use contradictory statements to your critical answer? What if one can't justify it through counter statements? Will it be fine to not have any contradictory statements in critical answer?
Oh my God. I have always taught my students that think of the contrary perspective, be respectful to that perspectives, finally counter it. So I don't know, Nadia. I think that you should be respectful to the contrary perspective, give space to that. But if you are not able to counter it, then your whole position will be undermined, I believe.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, if I may, I have a A question. Okay, so before that, I would read out Shatabdi's question. Shatabdi is our student from postgraduate studies. Shatabdi has written, Sir, since there is a fine line between being critical and judgmental, and we tend to make personal comments every time we read or view a text. So my question is, how do we stop judging a text based on our personal opinions and views and just evaluate the text on its own? Wow. Sir, you are not audible.
I said you should not be judging. You should not be judging a text based on your personal opinions. You should be judging a text on certain established standards or the standards that you establish. Okay. Always it should be a standards, whether standard existing standards or a standard for which you make a very credible case. For example, I give an example. When I was doing my dissertation, PhD dissertation, I took the, I passed a very, what do you say, very, it may look very harsh. I passed a very harsh judgment. And this harsh judgment is that very few exceptions. Bulk of Indian partition literature does not deserve to be in the canon at all. It looks very harsh, right? Looks very harsh. I came to this judgment by developing certain criteria from historiography, my reading of historiography, from my reading of trauma theory, from my reading of aesthetics of violence. So I build up standards, and then I judge the text against those standards, and then I give judgment. So if you do that, then you are not judgmental in a negative way. If you do this kind of thing, then you are not. If you become judgmental in a negative sense, if your judgment is just based on your opinion.
Thank you so much, sir. Shatabdi, I hope that answers your question. Okay, thank you, Shatabdi. Thank you, sir. Sir, if I may put forward my question. It's
Sure.
not much of a question, sir. It's actually a reflection, kind of. Sir, we talk about critical thinking. Sir, I would like to draw your attention to the other kind of thinking, that is the creative thinking. So do you think that, there is a scope for a blend of this critical and creative thinking in a small space like that of writing an answer?
See, actually, if you an honest answer to your question is that I do not have an answer to your question. That is the honest answer, because I have never thought of creative thinking in a way that is linked up with critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because whatever knowledge I have of creative thinking, in my discipline actually, creative thinking has more to do with imagination,
Yes,
than reason. But in managerial, some books of managerial communication that I have studied and that I have also taught to the students at the MBA level, there they use this creative thinking as synonymous with out-of-box thinking.
but that is a very narrow approach, in my opinion.
Yeah, and when they do that, then creative thinking means something like critical thinking. So as I told you, I have not done the deep study of this affinity of creative thinking with critical thinking. So my honest answer is that I do not know precise answer to your question, but Nevertheless, I try to answer your question based on what I know.
Thank you so much, sir. Participants, if you have a question or a comment, you may write in the chat box or you may speak directly to sir. My colleagues, students, and participants, if we have any questions or comments, we may please write in the chat box. So Nazia, thanks you for providing the critical thinking tools, which
Yes,
is
yes,
important, very important.
Okay, very good, very good. If my students utilize that tool, nothing will make me happier than that.
Yes, sir. So because we keep telling them to make their answers based on critical thinking without providing them the adequate direction. So after this presentation, sir, I believe they have got a direction and they will be able to apply those tools and whatever has been discussed.
Yes. Okay, I think if there are no more questions, we can wind up.
Sure, sir. So thank you so much once again for the first session, which is cultivating critical thinking, a very, very important component for academics and not simply academics, as you know, in for our life as well, for our everyday life in general as well. So this basically ends the first session of the special lecture series organized by KIIT School of Languages. And we would be meeting once again. We'd be convening at 2 p.m. For a lecture by Dr. Paritosh Chandra Dugar, and I would be requesting all the participants to use the same link to join the next session, and I would be handing it over to the organizers now. I would be requesting Tanmay sir and Gaurav sir to take it from here. Thank you, sir. Okay, my apologies. The link is different, like, there is a different link for the next session. So my apologies. Please use the link which has been given to you for joining the second session, which starts from 2 p.m. Sir, I think there is another question. Sir, may I ask the question, sir, in the chat box? So it's by Priyanka, which says, sir, in our previous session, when you asked us to read the lines from the novel aloud and asked to, I can't see the message somehow. Okay, and asked to think about it and analyze it, was it more of a critical thinking or creative thinking approach? Because not all the interpretations were common. It differed from person to person, hence stating the creativeness in the answers. So you are not audible clearly. Yes, sir.
Priyanka, interpretations can differ from person to person. It doesn't have to, the same. But the thing is that whatever is the interpretation, that should sound logical. You are probably referring to my class when I ask you people to read a passage, and then I ask you, how do you, interpret it, or how do you analyze it, or how do you read it? And most of the time, the way you read it that is not creative thinking. That is the lack of critical thinking. It is the lack of both creative thinking and critical thinking. You just say something without really understanding. And this is where the tool that I provided you will come to your good esteem, will help you. Take my answer in a positive way. Try to understand your limitation, where the limitation is, because if you become a blind to your limitation, then you never improve. Most of the time when you people interpret a passage in class, sometimes it is on the money, but most of the time it is the lack of critical thinking. So not even creative thinking. Okay. Okay, Debanjali.
Um, Okay, sir. So thank you so much for this wonderful session, a very informative and a very useful session, not only for the students and scholars, but for everyone. I mean, who have been participating in this through the session. We all have something to take back home today. So thank you, sir, for your time. Thank you so much for the presentation. I would also like to extend sincere gratitude to all the participants present here. I would like to thank the organizers as well, and we would be meeting